where you get the phone call at 9 o'clock at night. Hey, I need somebody to take this child for at least one night because we don't have a home for them and we don't want them to sleep in the DSS office in the county. So they'll call around. But if nobody wants to do that and they're like, no, I don't want to take that child, even if they're licensed, you have the right to, turn that down. They might end up sleeping, in an office or two for a couple of nights. And if they can't find a family in that location, that's when they got to look elsewhere and go to different counties.
Yeah. Hey everyone, Steve here at the Living Enviado podcast, and welcome to this blistery day. At least it is for me. Just got through an ice storm. Just finally got the ice off my driveway, and but now we're about to hit a snowstorm. But anyways, let's get into these subjects. So a few months ago, I did an episode with my good friend Kenny Tyler in Taiwan about orphan care ministries outside the U.S., but we also talked about some things inside the U.S. Related to adoption and a little bit of fostering and things like that. Today, I'm going to talk about fostering. Well, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to ask a bunch of questions of my friend John Adams, this is basically what he does. He serves foster kids and he serves families who are foster parents. And in this conversation, we're going to be talking about or learning about an incredible project they have going on at the Southeastern Children's Home here in the Upstate of South Carolina. But we're also going to ask the question, is the church doing enough? Is the church doing enough? I think you'll know my answer as you watch this episode. But the flip side, this problem can be solved pretty easily. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into this conversation about fostering with John Adams at the Southeastern Children's Home. Hey, John, thanks for joining me today. I was listening to your story as you were talking, and I just found it very intriguing because, you're in business, you're in mortgage, but you're also involved in this ministry, Southeastern Children's Home, and you're doing both at the same time, which isn't very common. Especially for a business person. Mortgage industry, let's be honest. It's not exactly a slow, I guess it can be slow, but.
It can be, but if it's slow, it's stressful. When it's fast, it's stressful. So
it's just, yeah. I have a really good friend in Virginia that's in it too. And I do want to talk about this whole thing of you being in business, as well as the Southeastern Children's Home. But why don't we just start off with just letting people get to know you first? Give us a 36,000-foot view of you. And if possible, just give us a brief testimony of just your life and Christ and all that stuff.
Well, I'd say I'm from Georgia. Grew up in Georgia. I was born in Tennessee. So, but around 6 years old, moved to Georgia. Dad had a job transfer down there. Was playing baseball. That was kind of my thing growing up. Went to church and always had thankful I had parents that, took me to church and kind of helped me develop that faith. And I was baptized when I was 11. And, ever since then, you got your ups and downs and stuff like that. But ended up here in Spartanburg, South Carolina to play baseball at University of South Carolina Upstate. So played baseball there. From 97 to 2001, met my wife at school. She's from Duncan. So just seemed fit that we would just kind of stay here. Her whole family's from here, and started going to church at Central Church of Christ when I came to school here in 97. I still remember this to this day. My dad, when we got to school for orientation, after we did everything there, he was like, all right, there's a church about 1.5 miles down the road. We're going to go check them out. And I was like, okay. So we went down there, talked to some people, and the church had gotten a couple of men in their early 30s to come pick me up. I didn't have a car at the time, so they'd pick me up on Sunday and take me to church, and just kind of been going to church, there ever since. And now my wife is the director of children's ministry there, so she's our children's minister at our church. And so she used to be in corporate, and she left and went into ministry, and she was trying to climb the marketing ladder in the corporate world, and was doing really, really well, and just said, nah, I think I need a change. She was traveling a good bit. So I was playing Mr. Mom and working and, getting the kids up every morning, getting them fed, getting them to, daycare, whatever, school, stuff like that. And then, after a while, she would be gone for like 2 or 3 weeks at a time, out in Dallas doing these conferences and trying to get, showrooms put together for all these events that came in. And so she kind of, said, "Hey, I just can't do this anymore. I'm missing time with the kids." And I was like, "Well, I can take on more of the load. I can work more." And I really kind of wanted to see what I could do in the mortgage business without having to be so flexible with the kids and stuff. So I always kind of put that on hold a little bit. She took about a 50% pay cut. So we were like, "Ooh, this is going to sting a little bit." And, but that year, I made up that plus $100, and I'll never forget, again, the W-2 literally was like the amount that we lost in her salary plus like $100. And we both were just, this is amazing, just God's, just really working through this. And when and that was about the time when she started, working there. So she'd maybe doing that for about a year. I had been, involved in church, and, my story is a little different. About 10, 12 years ago, I was at a men's retreat, and somebody asked me to do a little message on the wilderness, Moses in the wilderness. And I was, what am I going to talk about, And it kind of hit me. I had been struggling with pornography for like 20 years. Started in, early, saw some stuff when I was 8, saw my first video at 12. Then in college, downloading stuff and seeing stuff on the internet. It was free. And that kind of, took me down a path. And I always knew I didn't want it, but I didn't know how to get rid of it. So it just kind of lingered for, off and on for 20 something years. And so I was kind of afraid to even come out and say anything about it, because my wife just, became the children's minister. And I'm like, man, if they know that her husband, was struggling with this, Satan's really good at making you feel that way, and using your past or certain sins to keep you from moving forward. And I just said, well, you know what, the wilderness, that's kind of what I'm in. I've been roaming for 20 something years in this, and I can't get out of it. And it's like, do I want to see the promised land, or am I going to be stuck? And a lot of changes happened. I met a guy right around that time that became one of my business partners when we grew a pretty good sized mortgage, branch here in the Upstate. And he was a recovering alcoholic, and he was running a CR class over at Anderson Mill Baptist. And I started going to that, and that really helped. And then I, kind of mentioned it at that little men's retreat. That was kind of my sermon, was about my journey, and I'd already kind of gone through everything and gotten it under control. And I had about 13 or 14 men come up to me and say that they were struggling with the same thing. So I ended up starting a CR class about 3-4 months later at my church, and helped some guys. And that kind of really started my journey more down giving back and understanding that, when you give your life to Christ, and that was the first time I really allowed him, Steve, to actually like infiltrate into me, where I had no choice. I had to rely on him to help remove those obstacles from me, because I've been trying to do it myself for so long, and I just couldn't get over it. So yeah, we just kind of pushed through a lot of that, and my heart just got really on fire for God, seeing how he was using everything, and the business growing, and it was just, life was great. And then, but Satan's crafty, he's always going to find a way to try to, find his way in there. And at that time we were making really good money, more than I ever thought I'd make, in my lifetime, in a year. And, over about a 3-4 year period, the pornography had gone away, but my pride and ego started kind of raising, we're growing this business, and, I'm making a lot of money, and I could buy the things that I wanted to buy and do the things that I wanted to do that I'd never been able to. And, after a while, you just lose who you are as a person. And my identity had become all of that I created. And if you hear that language, it had nothing to do with God anymore. And, I had to take a step back. The business kind of fell apart, and we all had to separate and go our separate ways. We just couldn't, just the market had changed and some other stuff. And we just had to, dissolve it and move forward. And during about that year's time of just kind of figuring out like what's going on, several things kept popping up. One, my heart just still, should I continue to do this, or, if God keeps putting opportunities in front of me, then I feel like I can still do this. But I was also having some opportunities to serve. And the director at Southeastern Children's Homes, good friend of mine, Brad Brooks, and he's been the director there. And we kind of started talking a little bit, and he started talking about, what they were doing at the children's home. And our church has been a supporter of them for many, many years, probably 30 or 40 years. And so I've always known about them, and I've always had a heart for the kids, and they'd always come to our church, so some of the host families would bring them for youth group and stuff like that. So we just kind of started talking, and he's like, well, we're switching to foster care. We're going away from a group home, and we're going into foster care. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't know anything about foster care. And he was like, well, here's a book. You should read this. And it was called Reframing Foster Care. And they were looking to hire somebody to build relationships with churches and go around and kind of talk. And he was like, you do that in mortgages. You build relationships with real estate agents to trust you and send you business. It's kind of the same concept. And I was like, yeah, I could probably do that. And we just kind of worked it out where I could work for them and still do some mortgage stuff on the side to supplement, the income. And so I've been doing it now for about 1.5 years, and hope we can continue to do it for a long time. But it's been really rewarding to be in something different, where mortgages are good. I mean, it's a good industry. It is. The consistency, though, where you talk about, it's like when it's fast, it's stressful. When it's slow, it's stressful. I mean, because you're always worried about what am I going to eat? You kill what you eat in that business. It's straight commission. So if you're not working, you're not getting paid, type of thing. But the ministry really kind of helped slow me down and find myself again of what's the most important thing. And I really just had to take a step back and just be like, all that was great, but when you feel like you can do whatever you want to do, then Satan kind of came in and said, the farther I kept getting away from God and the less I needed him, I was relying more on myself. And then God kind of became a Aladdin and a genie relationship. Let me rub the lamp when something's not going right and let me change my circumstance. And then I'm going to go back and start doing everything that I want to do. And then I'll call on you when I need something. But it wasn't a daily, I need you, I want you to guide me, and I want your will to be done, not mine. And so I have a new perspective now. I'm in God's, we've kind of started a new mortgage branch. I got 2 new business partners. They're good Christian men, and we're making some progress and moving forward on that side of the business again, which is really neat. Much less stressful this time around. Kind of got a better understanding of where my role would be in that partnership and what I just kind of need to focus on that they need my help with. And we all have, different strengths. So we kind of rely on that, but they know that I'm involved in this, and one of my other business partners is involved. He's got some type of little nonprofit ministry as well that he does for recovering alcoholics and drug addicts. He does counseling with them, and my other business partner is involved in several nonprofit organizations and all Christian, based things. So it's just been really cool just to, we meet, we pray, we talk about how God is blessing us, and then, whatever comes throughout that day is what he's given us, and we're just going to be satisfied with it.
I did like your genie in a bottle metaphor, because I've actually had that thought, like when I'm praying.
Really?
For years, okay, God, you're not my genie in a bottle. Like when you're praying for something, like, so the idea is like, well, if you got to ask to get, seek and knock and all that stuff, which is scriptural, but at the same time, I wonder how many times we do treat him like a genie in a bottle, just rub that lamp, poof, comes out, and voila, get what you want. But I mean, I appreciate you sharing all that, because there is a lot to that, because it's pretty cool to see how, where you went from to where you are today, even from the business perspective of, a business and, successful to, I guess, failure. Would you call it that? Or
I wouldn't say so much failure.
Or you just had to exit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's failure if you didn't learn anything from it. Certain circumstances. And honestly, I can really look and see all of us that were involved in that. when I kind of take a step and look at, that 3,000-foot view, we all had certain things that we were struggling with. And I think we all were making the most money we had ever had. And so there was a lot of just, well, I can do this on my own. When things start to crack and break apart, people are going to look out after themselves. It's just human nature.
Sure.
And that's okay. I did the same thing. So you end up having to do some stuff. And there was some fractured relationships for a while, but those have been, amended. And, we're moving forward. And, now I look at it and I'm very thankful that God allowed me to experience that and go through that, because it made me realize that I got to have him in my life. And, Satan is always going to try to find a way to distract you and move you forward. So when things are really good, sometimes he just leaves you alone. And that's what he did with me. There was, during that 4 or 5 year period, I really didn't have anything that I could complain about that I remember. Everybody was healthy. Things were going great. We're doing stuff, moving into a different house, all that stuff. And then it was just like, where is God? And I feel like he just kind of did that for all of us, not just me, but we all got separated. We all needed to kind of go. He had different plans for each of us, and I'm very thankful now. When I was looking at it then, I was angry and just what just happened. But now I'm like, no, that wasn't a failure. That was, that was a blessing.
Well, I guess that's not a great word. It was a wake-up call.
Oh,
I'm
100%,
thinking failure from a worldly point of view is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
From a worldly point of view, you were at the peak of success financially, material gain, all that stuff, and then suddenly it kind of crashes, so to speak.
When you lose 90% of your income in 6 months, you got to rearrange some stuff.
God turned it around. I mean, but the good thing is you got to the point where you were attentive to, okay, now what, God? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Of course, I love the fact that you were honest about you were angry. There's been times in ministry where I've been angry.
Yeah.
Like, why am I even doing this? Why am I don't want to continue on. I was like that a couple of years ago. I didn't want to continue on. I wanted to just give it up and say, to heck with all this. This is not worth it. And I really think that God can work with us when we're honest and what the struggle is and what's going on. And so I appreciate that you actually said that. I also appreciate that you are in business. So I'm curious, let me take a step back.
Okay.
So somewhere along the line, because it was the 36,000 foot view, the macro view. So let's go down to a little micro level. Like, were there other things that stirred your heart toward children? Because, you said your wife's in children's ministry at the church. She left her career. Funny thing is, I'm from Dallas, so it's pretty cool that she did a lot of work in Dallas.
Yeah, she did I can't remember the convention center, but I've always had it. I don't know. I've just always, my dad and mom were always real big on telling me growing up, hey, if somebody's in class and that you see somebody getting picked on or something, like, don't allow it. I think a lot of that just growing up, and I would see some of that stuff. And a friend, I remember when I moved into our house when we first moved to Georgia, there was a kid across the street who was in high school, but he was mentally challenged, or had Down syndrome. And he would come over, and he was one of the first kids I met in the neighborhood, and his name was Eddie. And we became really good friends. And my dad was like, you need to, like, he's no different. So treat him just like everything. So we'd always invite him to be in our circle with the kids in the neighborhood and play football, and he would run all over us because he was so much bigger than us. And I'll never forget him. Like, that was kind of my first experience of, somebody wanting to be my friend just because. Like, I don't know if you've ever been around a lot of kids with Down syndrome before, but they're the most loving individuals I've ever been around. Like, I just don't know if they have a hate gene inside of them. And we laughed and just had so much fun, playing around the neighborhood. I remember he'd come over to my house every morning, and I'd walk with him down to the school bus stop, and he would always grab the paper in the driveway and bring it to the house to give to my dad when we left. So I think just my parents always saying, look after those that, like, I think my dad saw that growing up. We all see it. And so I think it kind of started there, and then playing baseball and seeing other kids look up to you. and want to be like you when you make a high school team or play in college, and they think you're a superstar, and you're like, I ain't going anywhere in this game, but this is my last stop, But just when you just think back to when I started thinking back to my childhood, I remember all the people that poured into me, showed me attention just because. And so I've always just kind of like, when I got around other kids, I always wanted to make them feel special. And then just, going to church and seeing some of these kids come through the system when we were a group home, and, they were all middle school, teenage boys and girls at that time. And seeing them in the youth group and hearing their stories, it just, it makes you very thankful that I didn't experience any of that, but I easily could have. But the biggest, I think, that really pushed me into this was that book that I had mentioned, Reframing Foster Care. It was written by a guy named Jason Johnson, who's part of CAFO, which is Christian Alliance for Orphans. And I read that book, and the best way I can describe it, it's written more of like a small group study. So each chapter is maybe only like 3-4 pages, and then there's questions afterwards. But he takes the whole, foster care business, DSS, all of that, just the work of foster care, and he relates it to the gospel. And it absolutely just ripped me apart when I read that book. I mean, I was like 3-4 chapters in, crying, and I'm just like, what is going on? And, just reading the stories of how his life had changed and how God was working in him, and that, am I really a disciple of Christ? I mean, that really is what it came down to is, James 1:27, pure and undefiled religion is serving orphans and widows, because, and I always read that as, if you do that act, then your religion is good, right? And that's not what it's actually talking about. It's, if you do those things, it's what's happening to you, what God is allowing to happen to you, which makes your religion undefiled and pure because of of serving and having humility and turning yourself over. And, and gosh, there's so many examples. Jesus put his disciples in positions that, they didn't know what it was going to take. They didn't have any clue, and he was putting them in positions because of trust. And so, even at the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000, the disciples were complaining. They're arguing, come on, Jesus, the crowd's hungry. It's late. Let them go home, get something to eat. They can come back tomorrow. And he was just like, no, just go find something, just go ask who's got something. And a boy comes up with some fish and bread, a child. And he had more faith than those who were following Jesus at that time. He said, here's what I've got. And still the disciples were like, what are we going to do with this? And Jesus multiplied it. And so the lesson out of that is, just bring what you've got to God. Just bring what you got, and then let him multiply and take it. And so I was like, I don't know foster care. I don't know that much about it. I've never fostered, but I've always had a heart, for that. And so it was just like, I need to do something in this ministry. After reading that book, it just resonated with me. And it doesn't do that for everybody. I mean, some people are not meant to probably work with kids. They're just better with adults or, college age people that might not have the patience for children.
That would be me, I think.
But I've mentored some of the kids there. We go fishing. I take one to church on Wednesday nights with me. He likes to go, and I just spend time with him. And I mean, they're normal kids. They really are. They've just been kind of dealt a bad hand. And who's going to step in? Isn't that the church's responsibility? I think a lot of Christians have a thought that the government needs to handle that because that's the way it's being done now. And yeah, the government can help, but just in Spartanburg County, I think there's around 200 kids in the system on average. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little bit more, but there's probably another 20 to 30 children that are in what they call like group homes. And they probably shouldn't be in a group home. Not that they're bad, but just their situation could mean that they could have a family. but we don't have enough families. And honestly, like if we had 30 families, new families today, we would not have a kid probably in a group home or sleeping in a office when they get taken away from their parents waiting on a family, or having to be shipped to a different county. So it's like, one church of a congregation of 3,000 people, like some of these bigger churches, that's 1% of the families. If 1% of the families decided that they would want to help, they wouldn't be fostering full time, but they could help that situation.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
So you said 200 kids in the foster care system, just in Spartanburg County alone.
Just in Spartanburg County.
Now you said how many kids are in the group home?
There's probably somewhere, it averages probably from 20 to 30. And that might be 3 or 4 different homes with, 4 or 5, 6 kids in each home or something like that.
So
and some of those kids, Steve, are not like at a trauma level, where sometimes more group homes, or I would say like there's a higher level of maybe needs for that child. Mm-hmm. When you've got those things and you've got 20 or so kids, maybe 10 of those out of those 20 could probably go to just a normal home if they had one. But they're putting them in this group home because they just didn't have another place to put them, and they didn't want to ship them out of the county. And then you got to think, well, I've been going to this school already, and then I just get taken away from my parents, and then now I'm going to Columbia to live with some family down there and start a new school. I mean, think about being 6, 5, whatever age, and going, what's happening? I'm not with my parents. Now I'm in a different county, and I'm going to a different school all within, a week. Like I don't even know if I could process that, in that moment of what's going on. But it's just amazing when these kids are so resilient, and when they truly see that a family is loving them. And that's what we really do at Southeastern Children's Home. And what drew me to this ministry was the families that we want to bring in to Christian organization. And we want them to, take these kids to church. And so any family that decides to foster with us signs a statement of faith that says that they believe in Jesus Christ and that he's their Lord and Savior. And we're not requiring them to go to church every Sunday, but we'd like to know that they're at least taking the child and the children that are in their care, because we just want to introduce them to Jesus and let him just kind of take over. So our main objective is to kind of foster the foster parents and support them. We have statistics that say that 90% of families who are supported by a church that are fostering these foster families, if a church is supporting them and helping kind of meet some of their needs, 90% of those families will continue to foster after 1 year. 60% will fall out in the first 6 months if they're not supported by a church. They just stop altogether and they never come back to fostering. They don't want to do it. It was too hard. That's where I felt a responsibility. There's a saying in the foster care world, everybody can do something. And it's really true. Everybody can do something. So I was like, well, what's my role? What's my part in this? And it just seemed like a natural fit to come and work and share this message with churches and see if there's, small groups or individuals in that church that either want to foster or be involved with our ministry. And then we just kind of show them how they can do that and partner with us and how they can help.
So let me ask you about the other 170 kids. Mm-hmm. Are they already inside a home?
Yeah, they're in homes.
Okay.
So out of that 200, those are actual children that's how many is total in homes.
Okay.
All right. So out of that, though, there's some that are in some group homes that could probably have individual homes. There's some that are, waiting. And when I mean waiting, I think DSS is kind of like, they're just, there's probably hundreds more of families that are being talked to in the county, but they're not at the point where DSS is having to remove the children. They've got things they need to work on. So they always kind of do that first before they just take the kids. And so there's, hundreds that just could be coming into the system at any given point. If the families can't do what they're supposed to do to get their house, in order, get power turned back on, stuff like that.
So I want to point out something. I want to point out a few things, of a couple of things you said. Number one, in Spartanburg County, I know for a fact there's over 600 Protestant churches. So when you have over 600 Protestant churches and you have, let's say on the high end, 30 kids still waiting to get into a home, kind of a normal home, it's important to realize that there is the capacity to do it. There is opportunity, there are people. The problem is, I don't know what the problem is. Okay. I'm sure we could list probably a dozen different reasons why people say no, but I have a hard time believing that there's not 30 families at least.
There is. I just don't think, Steve, people realize that it's an option because it's out of sight, out of mind. If your church isn't involved with it and you don't know what ministries or missions, are being done, and most churches, they have all that, but where's the foster care ministry? And when I started looking around, I'm like, a lot of churches don't have that. Why not? The Catholic Church has done a really good job, I think, over the years, with orphanages. I mean, they've done a ton for kids and stuff like that. And I don't know. I don't think people feel like, oh, that's for me. That's too hard. Fear. I'm going to get too attached. I mean, there's a million reasons why people will talk themselves out of it. What changed for me was, listening to these messages and going, this is not about me being a foster parent or me getting into foster care or any other, family that gets into it. They're truly just wanting to serve and take care of some of these children just because. And that's not for everybody. Like there's some people that do not need to foster, that they say they want to, but I've talked to some of those people and I'm like, they just don't have the right mind frame right now, or their marriage isn't in a good place because it's going to put a strain on the marriage. And so it's important that we find good families and then support them and really help them through that first year. Otherwise, if they try to do it on their own, they just kind of fall out. But again, it goes back to, as Christians, God's asking us to be disciples. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to pick up our cross and follow him. And I just didn't feel that way in the mortgage industry, that I was picking up my cross every day. To some of my employees, yes, we were helping them and providing them a life and being able to pay them. And that's great. And, I was very fortunate to be in a position to be able to do that. But it's just not the same as seeing a kid smile. And when I go to camp and this, one of the foster boys kind of latched on to me that week, and we fished almost every day at this camp. And, Steve, we're worshiping on Friday nights, the last night, and we're worshiping, singing songs, and he's wanted to stand next to me. And so he was standing on the pew, I'm standing up. So he's just a little bit taller than me, standing on the pew, and he's got his arm around my shoulder. And during singing, he just looked at me, he goes, "Thanks for being my friend this week." And so now we hang out, and I take him to church every Wednesday, and hopefully he can come over on Friday after Thanksgiving and spend some time with us and my family. So
you said two things that really struck me that I loved, because I say very similar things when I talk about churches with global missions, sending missionaries, doing work abroad. One of them was everyone can do something. Okay, I say that a lot because I don't, it's kind of like the same thing. You said not every family needs to foster. There's different reasons why they don't need to foster. But when I correlate it back to missions, when I talk about missions like in another country, my argument is every church and every believer can do something. Not everyone needs to go. Believe me, I've met some people. Yeah. I wish I'd never even come for a week, much less come for a lifetime. But the reality is there's always something you can do. In fact, I just took a pastor from here in Spartanburg County to the Middle East. We were there a week ago. And, he has no desire to really go back and forth. He has no desire to live there, obviously. But when he agreed to go, he does do trips periodically, mostly to South America. But when he got there and he got to interact with the church, he found something that him and his church can actually get involved with that doesn't necessarily involve someone going over there, but it's a way to come alongside an Arabic-speaking church. So, the thing is that, we can always come up with an excuse for something. Churches can come up with an excuse for not being involved in something. But the truth is obviously, if you're a church of 20, 30 people, you're limited on the type of ministries you can have because you can't do everything. If you've got 3,000 people, there's a good chance you could probably do a little bit of everything in the city. But the reality is, 600 churches plus more churches being planted all the time. One Protestant/evangelical church in Spartanburg County for every 500 people. We've got plenty of churches. there should be no one in a foster care home. Or what'd you call it?
There's a difference between a group home.
A group home. That's what I was
thinking.
thinking.
Group home is more of the, I guess,
kind of the holding pattern.
Yeah, it's kind of more of the real original term of like an orphanage, so to speak, where they have somebody that lives in that house constantly, being paid to take in kids and stuff like that. Then foster care is just voluntary. Like, I want to get licensed, I want to foster, I'm going to bring kids into my own home. And that's kind of the difference. And the group home model has kind of been going away, and it forced us. We'd done the group home model for 40 years, and up until about 2.5 years ago, we switched due to law changes and some legislation that came through, just making it really difficult to do that type of business. And some of it was the families that we knew that we were bringing in, Steve, didn't have the capacity or the training to handle some of the trauma level that DSS was now requiring that group homes had to take. So we had to just reassess and go, it's hard to find those families. Like, there's very few, far in between, that have that good of experience that can handle that type of stuff. Otherwise, it's just normal families saying, hey, we're going to give this a shot. And, and then it's a rude awakening sometimes where they're just, I didn't know what to expect, and it just didn't work out. So,
I mean, I have a friend that did fostering, and I know it's hard.
Yeah.
And we got friends in our church who do fostering. But the one back in kind of the Dallas area, it really was traumatic at times. So I understand that there's situations like that. But I also understand there's someone equipped and designed within the church that can handle that. Because then it goes to the second point I wanted to point out. You were talking about the critical nature of church support. Mm-hmm. When the churches are engaged and they're supporting the people involved, they're more likely to survive. More likely to survive as a foster parent. Because the same goes with missionaries who serve abroad. The vast majority of missionaries who come back from the field early come back for preventable reasons. And a lot of that has to do, in my opinion, because the churches were not engaged with them. It's like, okay, we send you, we're going to pray for you. Either we're going to give money to support you or whatever. And then it's out of sight, out of mind. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that the ones I've always found where their home churches were engaged with them, like just caring about them, not just caring about the ministry, but caring about them as a person, as a family, with kids, or whatever the situation is. Those were the ones that tend to last the longest. Those were the ones that had probably the healthiest ministries, because they had churches who were standing with them. Mm-hmm. Rather than, because we've been on the receiving end of, oh, we only care about the ministry, now send us a business report, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and then we'll send your check.
Yeah, and it's like, do you even care about what's happening with my kids or my wife or even me for that matter? Like, what's going on? But the reality is a lot of it is business. It's kind of treated as a business. And so when you pointed that out, I think it was I think it was important to say that. Because when everyone can do something, those everyones who can't do the actual fostering are the ones that can come and say, oh, I can babysit. I can help with diapers. I can help with formula. Or, what is it can I do that can help strengthen the family? Make sure, babysit to give the parents a date night.
Yeah, we do all of that. Each church we speak at, like I'm going to a church on Sunday over at Drayton Mills. And there's about 13 or 14 people that we're going to bring in lunch.
What church is that?
Drayton Mills Church Christ.
Okay. No, I know there was another one over there, but no, they moved, that a friend of mine went to.
Gotcha. And so we're going over there, and there's about 13 or 14 people. One of the things, and just being keen on this, because that is almost an all black church over there, and the heart and just the giving from that congregation was just amazing, and the stories and the people that wanted to help out. And so you just got to be honest in situations like this. There are more white families that foster than other ethnicities and other races, and so you get a lot of white families that might have black children or Hispanic children. And one common thing is I don't know how to do hair. Like, I hardly know how to do my own hair. So, I don't have the capacity or the knowledge of how do I help this child And so having other people like that, and there's one of the gentlemen at that congregation is a barber. He runs his own barber shop, and he volunteered to wanting to cut hair once a month for some of the children that need it or need some help. And there's some ladies that were like, "Oh, we can help with braid hair or do something for these children." And where do you see that on an everyday basis? That type of love and commitment to a child, that only happens because of Jesus Christ. Our world tells us that they're different, we're different, everybody's different, stay in your own category, and if they're not like you, then don't like them. Just to see people come together and forget about the racial backgrounds, forget about all that stuff, and it's truly just a heart for wanting to serve and put something bigger before yourself. And you only find that only Christ can bring people together like that. And there's so many ministries that things can happen that way. I just found it in foster care.
Well, I mean, foster care is important. I mean, adoption is important. We had a guy he actually lives in Taiwan I don't know, 2 months ago. And they've been involved in, they've adopted a couple of kids from China. They've been involved in orphan care facilities in China, Thailand. Now they're looking to get involved in Taiwan. And part of what they do, and they teach at an international school, and they're originally from the Dallas area, but they're also looking at how can we get churches back home involved, because then you go beyond Spartanburg County, you get into the state of South Carolina, you get to similar statistics where there's far more Protestant and evangelical churches than there are kids who need foster care or foster homes. So it's constantly off balance. And I know it's some of it's awareness. I agree with that. Some of it, it's like dealing with mission work outside the United States. Some of it's just awareness of, kind of battling, misconceived ideas that were maybe traditional ideas from the past that you can only go or send. And, but when you're in 2025 and there's just so many other ways you can be involved, than maybe it was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But we're still stuck 100 years ago. But there's also, beyond the awareness of foster kids, it's just the awareness of anyone can do something. My family's not going to foster a kid because we take care of my wife's parents. They live with us. They're both 96 years old. It's a bit too much to do, to be able to do that while also taking care of foster kids, because my wife couldn't do both. But there's always something that can be done. We actually helped a family out with just watching their dogs as they went off on vacation, and and they're heavily involved in fostering children. They've been doing it for years. There's just and when you say everyone can do something, it's not everyone can do something and it's going to cost you 40 hours a week.
Correct.
It's everyone can do something. It may only cost you a couple hours every couple of months or even once or twice a year. It's not going to derail your current ministry. It's not going to derail your life. It's just doing what the church does, and that's serving each other. I mean, helping each other, because we would do that even if it was your own child, like your biological child, and you needed help. Oh, sure, we're going to run. You need food, we got food. Oh, you need diapers, we got diapers. It's the same concept, But I do want to reemphasize before we move on, the church support. And when I say church, I'm not talking about just staff. I'm talking about the body.
Correct.
That it is imperative that they're involved. It's imperative that they learn to figure out, to ask questions, to parents. Because I kind of want to go ask my friends who do foster kid, does anyone in the church actually ask you if you need anything? And just to see what his answer would be. Because sometimes we just need to ask.
Yeah.
Like, if I could do something to help, like, what are you looking for? To see if, then I could see if I could actually fulfill that or not.
Correct.
Maybe I can, maybe I can't. But the key is asking the question to begin with, and then just figuring out, okay, what is it that I can do? So I'm curious, like, okay, you talked about awareness is an issue, which is probably a big issue, but let's say, like, if you could speak to a church, they're aware of it, they're aware of the problem or the need. I hate to use the word problem. It's not like these kids are problems, but the need is out there. I did like, just kind of a side note, I really like that you brought up the reality of the constant changes these kids go through, because I hadn't thought about that before. Like, okay, they go from this house to this house. Well, this house may be in a completely different school district than that house. and their friends were over here. Oh, now they're jumping over here. It's like being a military brat or a missionary kid or something where you're constantly changing locations every year, every couple of years, every couple of months. And you got new friends, but then you get to the point you don't even want to build friends.
Because you think you're going to be leaving.
Exactly. You know, when you go to a church, how do you challenge them to think beyond what they're used to?
You know, the old message, you know, that used to, when I first kind of started, Steve, was, you know, we need families, right? You know, there's 3,500 something kids in the system just in South Carolina. So I'm painting this big picture, right? And you've got all these children in the system. And one of the statistics that blew my mind away that's not even accounted for, but through other organizations and stuff that are involved with this kinship care, is basically they don't really count a lot of those statistics because that child goes to a family member. So that's kinship care, like an aunt, uncle, a grandparent takes that child, not some other family. So kinship stays within that arena. And there's probably 70,000 kids, they think, in Spartanburg, or not Spartanburg, in South Carolina, that are in kinship care. That haven't even been submitted to the system. Like this, the family just, my daughter or my son can't take care of their child. So now the parents end up taking them. There's over 70,000 just with that aren't in the system. So thank goodness they at least had a family member that, you know, wanted to take them. But what happens if those families just like, I can't do this anymore or something like that, you know? So we used to paint this big picture, but now it's more specifically in your county. That number is way smaller. And when we go from there's, you know, 3,500, we probably need another 300 families total in South Carolina. That doesn't resonate if I was speaking in front of your churches, like, oh, that's the whole state's problem, or where do I fit into that? So when we bring it down into smaller numbers of, yeah, you know, just in Spartanburg County, if we had probably a total of 20 to 30 more new families, not all of them would be fostering, but every time there's kind of a flip with kids where we got some come in the system, some leave, you've always got enough families to be able to handle that, where we're not doing emergency placement care anymore, where you get the phone call at 9:00 at night. Hey, I need somebody to take this child for at least one night because we don't have a home for them and we don't want them to sleep in the DSS office in the county. So they'll call around, but if nobody wants to do that and they're like, no, I don't want to take that child, even if they're licensed, you have the right to, you know, turn that down. You know, they might end up sleeping, you know, in an office or two for a couple of nights. And if they can't find a family in that location, that's when they got to look elsewhere and go to different counties and move those children. So it's like, yeah, 30. What if just one family in the congregation and then another family at another congregation? Like that number gets really reasonable. And it's not out of the question for those who have a heart in that ministry to want to do that. A lot of the narrative now is it's not we're trying to recruit families. It's how can you be a disciple for Jesus Christ in this arena, in this ministry, if you feel like you got a heart for serving underprivileged children. That's kind of the message now. We talk about the cultural narrative. It's very easy to be comfortable, to not come out of your comfort zone. That's human nature. Convenience at all costs. That's what our culture tells us. And, you know, avoid anything difficult. Isolate yourself. I mean, how many times have you talked to your neighbors in your neighborhood? Do you even know, like, I can't remember some of the names of the people. I've lived in my neighborhood for 6 years now, and I only know one or two of my neighbors. It's just how we operate now. Everything is just internal. But the gospel narrative is like, seek out those difficult places where suffering is the most acute and then go build a home there. That's what Jesus is asking us to do. And if that's in foster care, great. If that's in another ministry, global missions, whatever it is, there's still the fear of convenience and all of that, or can I do this, keeps us from moving forward. And that's what Satan wants. He doesn't want anybody involved that's going to do something good for the kingdom. And we're not in competition with other people. You know, this isn't, well, my church does this and your church does this. Like, there's just no competition when it comes to children, in my opinion. So we all, regardless of background,
there shouldn't be,
but
there is, but there shouldn't be.
I'm
curious about the Southeastern Children's Home. I mean, how widespread is the reach?
Yeah, so right now, because we've always been a group home, we've only supported probably 15 to 18 kids over that time period. We had three houses on campus. We got a 60-acre campus out in Duncan, and had been there for
I did not
50
know
years.
that.
Yeah, been there for about 50 years, and there's three houses. We're getting ready to build another house. Part of our vision is to grow an actual community in a neighborhood of a foster care community on campus. So that's the 15, 20-year vision that we have right now. And so we have found a builder who wants to build us a house. They want to be a part of something. Everybody can do something. There's a builder out there, and McQuinn Homes, great organization. They have really good just Christian people at the top, and they want to donate a house every year for a good cause. So they're going to build us a house and help us with the plans, and maybe do that once a year for us to kind of grow that community. I'm like, so, when I start seeing stuff like that, I'm like, that's what it's about. I mean, just giving back, knowing that you're blessed and being able to give back. But, and I know they don't do it because they want to be recognized. They do it because they just feel it's the right thing to do. So, the heart of that, and just that we've got those three families on campus, and we've got 4 more off campus, and then about 2 to 3 more that are signing up. So in a year and a half, we've gone from, like 3 foster families to 7, and, hopefully we'll have 10 here in the next 3 or 4 months. And so, we're just kind of getting started, honestly. We're sticking close to Spartanburg County. That's just kind of where we're in right now, in Greenville County. Where we're located is almost not far off of 101, on that backside, on the other side of Greer, where Duncan meets. So we're close enough to Greenville and close enough to Spartanburg where it's almost a halfway point. So convenience is really good. And we're getting a lot of families that when we talk to them about fostering, that actually want to live on campus. Like, they would prefer to sell their house because it's a benefit to them. They can sell their house, pocket their cash. We let them move in. They pay a very small amount of rent every month, and I'm talking like $250 something a month, and then they pay their utilities. And they're in a community with people who foster and their kids, and we have a counseling center on campus. So if they need counseling, or the children come to therapy, I mean, like, everything is there. So if they really want to be involved in it and say, this is something we really want to do long term, there's a place for those families. We'll build you a house in a year or so. Go ahead and start fostering with us, and prove to us that that you're doing everything right, giving us a good name. That's kind of part of it. Let us help support you, get you tied into different churches that want to be a part, and then you've got your community of people there on campus. We try to provide them a van, like a big service van, so when they've got 8 kids that they're toting around, you need a little bit bigger vehicle. So we're able to support them and do that. There's a softball field on campus. There's picnic, shelters. There's a pond they can go fishing at. We used to have horses out there when they were a group home, but we kind of got rid of those. And so I mean, it's just kind of different. For in a year and a half, 2 years, we're kind of behind, a little bit from some of these major foster care agencies like Epworth, Connie Maxwell. They do great work. I mean, again, we're not in competition. Miracle Hill does a great job. And there's some people who are like, hey, we're just not the right fit, but this organization would be perfect for you and what you're trying to get done. You got to kind of just let go of all those fears of, I don't know if I can do this. Well, the disciples, I mean, none of them knew what they were really doing. They were, some of them were, teenagers, young adults, and they're being asked to do these big things. And Jesus is asking us to trust him, but just get involved,
like trusting him that he's going to feed 5,000 plus
people.
Yeah.
I mean, you just got to let him work. And, the human element always gets in the way. I think people love the idea of it more than actually getting involved. What we're finding too is a lot, which we appreciate, is more people just would rather give money to a cause than actually get involved. And there's a need for that. There's, maybe the hands, all right, but we need some feet, we need some eyes, we need a heart, we need ears. And so somebody in the congregation is going to meet some of those needs at some point. And when we start putting all the pieces of the puzzle together of all the people that are involved in wanting to help with foster care, It's going to be really neat to see over the next 2 to 3 years when things really start kind of get going in our area.
So a two-part question. For those who are in Spartanburg, Greenville counties, like how can they get in contact with you? For those outside of Spartanburg and Greenville counties, like what can they do? Like where could you point them?
So one of the things we're working on right now is revamping our website. Always call me, talk with you, figure out what the needs are, and then I can help them get in touch with the right individuals. But the new website, we're going to be having a needs list from all of our families. We're going to ask them to give us 2 to 3 things each month, one being the most important, 2 the second, 3rd the least, of things that you might need some help with that month. You're going to send it to us. We're going to put out a needs list on our website, and you can literally click, like if we needed, say, 10 boxes of diapers, it'll say 10 of, 0 of 10 fulfilled. And you can click on that box and you could say, I want to buy 5 boxes of diapers, or I'm going to go get 5 boxes and then I'm going to deliver them up to the children's home. You got 5 and then somebody else might get 1 and then another couple might get 2 and then another one might get 2, right? And then that order is fulfilled. And then you can see what other needs there. There'll be date nights, sponsor a date night, or babysit for a date night. Most people would rather sponsor it. So they might donate $150 to the children's home. We give it to that family. They hire a babysitter with that money and use that money to go on to eat with. You have that donation of clothes, all those things. We're always looking for, not raggedy stuff, but, gently used clothes. We try to, make sure these kids, kind of look nice and don't have whole stuff, like here's my holy socks, somebody might need them. We have churches that put together these like little kind of welcome baskets. And so they're for families who would take in a child, like the first time they take into that child. Sometimes you got to pick them up at 3 a.m. in the morning, or, go somewhere at a late night or on a weekend, and it might not be a convenient time for them, to get food or get dinner or something, or go to the store and figure out what they don't have. I mean, a lot of these kids just come with a t-shirt and a diaper on or something because they were just removed from their home and didn't even get a chance to pack. And so they'll put together little welcome baskets for boys and girls at different ages with some toys, maybe a toothbrush, a gift card to Chick-fil-A or Zaxby's for like $50 so the family could get something to eat, if that child's hungry. It's just little things like that. And they'll just keep them. They, like the church might say, I got a small group here that we're going to just do that throughout the year. We're always going to have 10 on handy. And whenever you need one, you just call us and we'll deliver it. Wonderful. You've got a family right now that fosters, and if they take in a new child, it's something that they could do as well. Your church could go ahead and get involved with something like that. So just really helping them find, like I said, you got people that want to do cut hair or tutor. Some of them are like, I'm a retired teacher and I'd love to, if there's any kids struggling in this, specific subject, let me know. I'll come over and try to help tutor them. So, the families just really appreciate that. Just knowing that they're not doing it alone puts them in a better mind frame. And our main objective is to make sure their marriage and their family is as strong as it can be. Because if the husband and wife are strong, then they're going to parent well. They're going to make better decisions. When they're completely stressed and things are not going good and then they're arguing and Satan's infiltrating that. So yes, are we trying to help the children? Yes, but we feel the biggest way we impact them is by supporting the family who's actually fostering them. Because if they feel that they're being taken care of and their life is continuing to stay as comfortable as we can help them make it, they're going to do a better job with these children and be in a much better mind frame to serve them the way that God wants them to.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening or watching this episode. I know for me, it was very eye-opening. There's some things that Jon said that I did not know about, and I'm here in Spartanburg County as well. I did know about the statistics of, there's more churches than there are foster kids who need a home. I did know that, and we've already hashed that out, so I'll just let it stand as it is. But this was a very eye-opening conversation. I hope it was for you. I hope you'll respond. I hope you'll do what Jon said. Every believer can do something. I hope you'll find what that something is in relation to foster care. whether it's serving foster parents, whether it's getting your church involved in foster care or helping foster children, something, or even just reaching out to Jon or someone at the Southeastern Children's Home to figure out what you could do. What, like you talk about giving, buying diapers or whatever as they're putting needs on their website so people can actually go out and practically, do something practical, like buy something for the families who are caring for foster children. But irregardless, everyone can do something. So I would encourage you to figure out what that everything is, what that something is that you can do. While you're at it, I just encourage you, if you found value in this episode, then please consider liking or following or subscribing on whatever platform you're on. Commenting, especially if you're over on YouTube. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know your thoughts about this episode. Let us know what you would like to see me, talk about, or what kind of people you would love for me to interview, as it talks about living Enviado, living sent, and go to our website, livingenviado.com. You can see our merch store. You can learn more about us as a business. We would love to get to know you. Anyways, thank you for listening or watching, and while you're doing that, don't forget to get out there and do what I keep saying every single episode. Get out there and live bold, live courageous, and live Enviado.